Hello, Jets fans, and welcome to another episode of Rich Sports Talk. Thank you so much for joining us here. It is Patriot Week, and it is time for the New York Jets to just end the streak. 14 games in a row, the New York Jets have lost the New England Patriots, and it has to end this weekend. I could talk about the preview for this game, but let's be honest. Jet fans, like the biggest thing is this is arguably the biggest game that the New York Jets have played in a long time. This is arguably the biggest game Zach Wilson has played for in his Jet career, and arguably the biggest for Robert Saleh. And there is a lot that goes into this game, but very simply put, this is a game that could easily define the New York Jets season. The first 6 games of the Jets schedule was going to be a gauntlet, even with Aaron Rodgers. And realistically, by the bye week, this team has to be at a minimum 2-4, preferably 3-3, but you want them to at least be respectable, or at least within the range where if this team had to get a quarterback at the trade deadline, they were able to do so. However, this team right now just needs to try to find a way to win games, because realistically, the winnable games on this schedule for this team, to me, it's the Broncos and it's the Patriots. I don't see this team beating the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't see this team beating the Philadelphia Eagles. I just don't see this team, the way it is currently constructed, beating those teams. Can they compete and have a shot? Absolutely. But realistically, and if I'm being honest, I don't think they have a shot. And look, this is the frustrating thing with the New York Jets. In the last year, I think only exacerbated this, which was you feel the Jets have a better roster. You feel the Jets have the better team than the Patriots, but they just couldn't beat the Patriots last year. And I know Robert Saleh and some of the players have been making the comments about how this is, been going on before they got there. I'm sorry, but you have to understand the way Jet fans are feeling, how they have been getting their nose rubbed in not only these last 14 games, but basically the last 2 decades plus against this New England Patriots organization. And you have to realize how important a game this is, because this game could be very crucial to Robert Saleh and Zach Wilson's NFL future. I'll start with Robert Saleh because I think Zach is a little bit easier to get into. But Robert Saleh, I believe many Jet fans still like. I do think there are critics of Robert Saleh. I think Saleh is a good head coach, but there are still issues about him. Every head coach has their issues. But I do believe that there's a good percentage of Jet fans. Like if you ask me, the majority of Jet fans still believe in him and still have faith in him. But I will say this. If the Patriots beat the Jets again and it gets ugly, I feel like the honeymoon, even I don't think they're in the honeymoon stage, but I feel that many Jet fans will begin to turn on Robert Saleh, because I feel like if the Jets lose this game, this season can get very ugly. And you're already starting to see some issues within this locker room. I think Saleh is a good, friendly coach, but Breece Hall tweeting out the 4 footballs after only getting 4 touches. It doesn't seem like Robert Saleh is involved in the offense as you would like. It just feels like this is a very precarious situation. And look, coming into this season, both Joe Douglas and both Robert Saleh were on thin ice, and this was pretty much a playoff mandated year. Do I think it could be skewed a bit because of the Aaron Rodgers injury? Yeah, but this team better compete and better have a shot at the playoffs by the end of the season, that they're in the thick of the race. And if they lose to the Patriots, I feel that most people will have turned their backs or will have lost faith in both Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas going forward. I don't think everyone, but I do feel that there will be a majority, and those criticisms will only get louder. For the roster construction, if Will McDonald is not active again this weekend, there will be major things, and I will be one of those voices, because as much as I have praised Joe Douglas, and I feel Joe Douglas has been the best GM that which isn't saying much, that he's been the best GM for this team in a long time. It is concerning where if you have a first round pick that isn't getting on the field, and I know the excuse is like, well, they have too many defensive linemen. Well, then don't draft a defensive lineman if he's not going to get on the field. It's not a great look where you have your two top picks, including the best center on the board, not playing right now in an offensive line that is woefully struggling. So you don't see Tippmann out there. McDonald was inactive. McDonald needs to be active. And I will go on the record and say, I get you worry about injuries and you want to have great depth in the NFL. But if you cannot on this roster get Will McDonald on the 53 on game day, you need to trade Carl Lawson. Get a pick for him. Get a piece for him. He's in the last year of his contract. You've made it clear Jermaine Johnson is a long-term piece and is a starter on this team right now. I think Jermaine Johnson's been really good. Bryce Huff to me is a more of a higher priority than Carl Lawson. I would try to lock up Bryce Huff, have basically a three-man rotation between him, Jermaine Johnson, and Will McDonald. And I get the counter argument last week. It's like, well, you know, they didn't need him because they wanted to have a better run defense. Well, they threw the ball over the yard because the Jets didn't have a pass rush. Week one, I didn't see a lot of Will McDonald. And look, I think the kid is a little bit more of a developmental prospect, but he has shown some burst. And I did like what I saw in the preseason. But if he's not going to be on the active roster, and I know that the Jets probably tried to trade out of 15, don't pick him then. If you had any idea that he wasn't going to be active on freaking game days, that is a horrible decision because there's other holes in this roster. Could you have gotten a starting caliber safety in the draft at that point? Could you have added another wide receiver, another playmaker to this room? It was an incredibly deep tight end class. Could you have gotten the number one tight end? It probably would have been a reach, but do you reach for a tackle at 15? I know there wasn't a lot of great options at 15, but if you're taking a pass rusher, he better be playing, and more importantly, he better be on the freaking roster because this isn't like a Vernon Golston where you could see very early didn't have the burst, didn't look good. Like McDonald has some juice, he has some speed, he has athleticism. I want to see him on the field. I want to see him at least on the freaking roster. Like if is a situation he can't get on the field, you need to trade Carl Lawson to open it up, get some draft capital, and look. I've said it before, 2024 is a better looking year now. And again, Rodgers today saying the rehab's going well, has a positive outlook, which is fantastic on the McAfee show. Really excited about that. But if Carl Lawson can get you a pick for next year, I think that is important. If Carl Lawson can bring you back a missing piece to this team, it's not going to bring you back an offensive lineman, but could it maybe bring you back a wide receiver? Could it maybe bring you back another safety? Could it maybe bring you back another athletic linebacker? It certainly could. Every team's looking for a pass rusher. So I just would really look into doing that. But if the Jets lose this weekend again, and Robert Saleh loses his fifth straight game against this Patriot team, there's going to be a lot of Jet fans that are done. And I can completely understand it because the Patriot game is different than any other rivalry in the NFL because they have stuck it to the Jets more often than not. And not only that, they revel in it. Like you can see in some rivalries, there's some sportsmanship at least, where if one team's getting killed, okay, they'll pull off the dogs. But like in this one, Bill Belichick doesn't just love to beat the Jets. He loves to humiliate the Jets. And some of the most humiliating moments as a Jet fan have come against this Patriot team. So for all these coaches that are saying, well, you know, we don't want to look too deep in the past. Well, Jet fans, we can't escape that past. We live in that all the time. And the fact that the last time the New York Jets won a football game against this team, Eric Decker was a wide receiver on this team. Barack Obama was the president the last time this team beat the New England Patriots. And if you want to cement yourself as the head coach, the GM, and if you're Zach Wilson, potentially the quarterback of the Jets, you have to beat this New England Patriot team, a team that is not better than you, a team that humiliated you twice last year, a team that has had your number. If you are Robert Saleh, you have done a lot of great things here as the New York Jets head coach. The one thing you haven't done is beat the New England Patriots. You've beaten the Buffalo Bills, and that's great. You've beaten the Miami Dolphins. That's great. You need to beat the New England Patriots, and you need to send a message to them and to your fan base that this isn't going to happen again, that they are a legitimate team and that they can beat the Patriots. Because let's be honest, I don't see them going to Foxborough with Zach Wilson and beating them. And the thing, too, is the Jets should have a better offensive coordinator than they did last year. They have a more talented team than they did last year. They have Breece Hall, which they didn't have last year. They have Dalvin Cook, who they didn't have last year. They have Mekhi Becton back, who they didn't have last year. So you look at this team, they have AVT. He wasn't there last year. They have all these pieces. There is no excuse. And when you watch Miami last weekend, what did they do? They ran the ball down the Patriots' freaking throat. That is what the game plan is. You run the ball, your running back gets tired, you put in a fresh running back, and you run the football again. And get behind the right side. Last week, 2 attempts to the right side behind AVT and Mekhi Becton. They averaged 6 yards a carry. So why are we only running it over there twice? I don't get it. But look, this is a psychological game for the Jets more than anything. If they win this game, the fan base will feel so much better about Zach Wilson. They will feel a lot better about Robert Saleh. They will feel a lot better about this front office. But if they lose this game, Zach Wilson again struggles against Bill Belichick, and he has his number. If Robert Saleh loses his 5th straight game against this Patriot team, if Joe Douglas's general managing is called into question because their first-round pick isn't even active and their second-round pick isn't on the field when the offensive line looks absolutely horrendous, there will be a lot of questions. Though, if the Jets win this game, it buys them time. Like I've said, I feel if this team can go to the bye 2-4, that would be great because their hardest part of the schedule is the first 6. And if they can get to the bye around that time, if you feel Zach Wilson isn't the answer, you probably have some teams which might be willing to move off. If the Vikings are 2-4 or 1-5 at that point, they might be more willing to move off of a Kirk Cousins. Maybe another team is willing to move off of, like, let's say the Saints, Jameis Winston, if they feel really good with Derek Carr. If there's the Panthers could be looking to move Andy Dalton to gain a pick because they're not a good football team. There's more options at that point. And if the Jets beat the Patriots, they have basically clinched and are playing with house money. Because in my opinion, if they can beat the Broncos, and I think the Broncos are beatable. I think the Broncos are not a good football team. They put themselves in a position where they have a little bit of a luxury and have a shot to go 3-3 into the bye and beat the Broncos, where if they lose to the Patriots, not only does that Bronco become an even much bigger must-win game, but you will just feel the psyche of this fan base and this fan base that supported this team on that Monday night game and this fan base that has been brutally tested with the Aaron Rodgers injury and had so much hope coming into the season. You will feel the brunt of the frustration. You will have people call out Saleh. You will have people call out Joe Douglas. You will have people still continue to call Zach Wilson. Look, if Zach Wilson wants to be the quarterback of this New York Jet football team, if he wants to have a future in this city, the best way for him to win back this fan base, to gain the trust of this fan base, is to beat the Patriots. Because Zach Wilson, his career, if we really look at it, was derailed by the New England Patriots last year because the Jets had won 4 games in a row. They were coming off of an unbelievable victory. And then Zach Wilson imploded in that game against the Patriots at MetLife, throwing 3 of the worst interceptions you will see. Then he goes to Foxborough. The defense pitches a shutout, and the Jets gain 2 yards in the second half. I want to remind you, Zach Wilson is 6'2". If he tripped on his shoelaces and fell forward, he would have gained more yards than the Jets did in the second half of that game against the New England Patriots. And then, of course, after the game, when asked about his responsibility and if it was on the offense for failing, he basically said no and basically burned every single bridge in that locker room. So if Zach Wilson wants to prove it to himself, prove it to his locker room, prove it to his fan base, he has to beat the Patriots. And he doesn't have to throw for 3 touchdowns and 300 yards. He just doesn't have to make the dumb mistakes. He has to use his legs like he did against the Cowboys last week when nothing was there, taking off and gaining yards in a positive way. Because you know what the Patriots are going to do. They're going to stack the box. They're going to bring pressure. They're going to blitz him. And there's going to be a lot of one-on-ones on the outside. And this team has to take shots. I know they're afraid of Zach Wilson pushing it down the field, but you have guys like Garrett Wilson. You have guys like Mecole Hardman. They have to get the ball. And look, Mecole Hardman has, 1 catch in the first 2 games? Get him in on jet sweeps. Give him shots on the outside and take some play actions. Look what happened last week when they did a play action. They hit a 68-yard to Garrett Wilson. Nathaniel Hackett has to have a better game plan. This offensive line has to have a better game. And look, I disagree with Robert Saleh basically this week saying he's not anticipating shuffling up this offensive line, that if Dwayne Brown doesn't go, he's basically going to put Turner in at left tackle. That they don't want to mess up Mekhi back to left tackle. I'm sorry, Robert. You got to get the best 5 out there. You got to get the best 5 offensive linemen out there. And you can't use that excuse when the New York Giants are putting out people that no one have ever heard of, putting them on the offensive line, and they're at least looking serviceable against 2 very good defenses. I'm sorry, but if Mekhi Becton, who's, by the way, played the majority of the snaps at left tackle in training camp, like I would put him there if Dwayne Brown can't go. But you kept saying all training camp, the best 5 will be out there. The best 5 will be out there. Well, in my opinion, Joe Tittman's one of those best 5. He's either got to be a starting center or a starting guard at some point. And if it gets ugly out there and Dwayne Brown is out there and can't block, or Turner's out there and can't block, or Connor McGovern's getting his lunch money taken again at the center position, you have to be willing to make a change. And the problem with Saleh, I feel, is one of the things about being a player coach is the players love you, but sometimes a coach, I feel like Saleh, gets into he believes the players will turn it around, or he has a little bit too much faith in the players instead of making the tough decisions. But again, guys, this is open up to your comments. If you're joining us after the video, we'll get to your questions afterward, but let's get right into it with good old friend Carlos. I have a bad feeling about this game. They're still very catharsis about the Rodgers injury, but I hope I'm wrong. What are your key matchups? I hope they put Garrett Wilson in multiple spots on the field. For sure, Belichick is going to take him away. Thanks. Yeah, that's what Belichick's going to try to do. I almost a little bit disagree, Carlos. I feel like the Patriots always want to take away your best weapon. And in some ways, I'll be curious to see what they do. I do feel they're going to give special attention to Garrett Wilson. But the other thing, too, is Breece Hall. Belichick talked about him extensively. I think the biggest thing is the run game. Patriots have struggled against the run. I feel like they're going to have to put Garrett Wilson one-on-one. But if that's the case, the Jets then have to utilize Mecole Hardman. They have to utilize Allen Lazard more. They have to utilize their tight end more. Look, Jeremy Ruckert needs to be playing. He's the number 2 tight end on this team. Like, Jeremy Ruckert's got to play. Great blocker. Has some pop in the receiving game. Look, I like Uzama, but Uzama can't block. Uzama doesn't have that burst. Rucker needs to be playing a lot more. I think the Jets need to get the tight ends involved, run the ball, maybe try a couple screen passes. But I'm curious to see what Belichick wants to take away, because could he realistically maybe take away Garrett Wilson in the running game? Sure, but I really believe that what they're going to try to do is take away the running game and force Zach Wilson to throw the football. And look, they've done a great job against Garrett Wilson, but as good as this defense is for the Patriots, I don't think it's as great as it has been, especially in the run game. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around Belichick losing to Zach. Yeah, James, I mean, I get it. And until you see it happen, it's hard to wrap your brain around it. I mean, Mr. Magix brings up a good point, the offensive line. Yeah, the offensive line to me is a big concern. And like I said last week, For people saying that full game was on Zach Wilson, I think you're crazy. I don't think Zach was bad. I'm seeing progress from Zach, which is good. I'm seeing him being more accurate and more decisive, but that offensive line looked horrible last week. And I don't think it helps when, you know, Hackett was blaming that, oh, they didn't get enough touches last week, and that's why certain players didn't get enough touches. Well, I'm sorry, you're the offense. You got to get first downs. That way you get more touches. And with Robert Saleh basically saying he's not expecting change on the offensive lines, I'm sorry, but you watched that game last week, and I'm screaming. Like, I tweeted, I'm like, put Joe freaking Tippmann in there. Like, Connor McGovern looked abused last week, but to me, you got to put the best five out there. And if you were to ask me what the best starting five for the New York Jets is right now, because I feel like Dwayne Brown is cooked. I know the argument's going to be, well, he didn't play the whole preseason. Well, the first two games are basically the preseason. Well, if that's the case and he plays, he better look damn better on Sunday, because if he looks the exact same, I'm going to feel like he's done. And if that's the case, then I feel the Jets have to move AVT to right, put Becton at left, and put Joe Tippmann at right guard. Joe Tippmann has pop. Joe Tippmann is a bully in the run game. Joe Tippmann was showing in training camp that he was raring to go. And look, you drafted this kid in the second round. He was the highest ranked center on the board. Like, if you draft an offensive lineman in the first two rounds, they better be starting. They better be ready to go. And I feel like they are ready to go. He's raring to go. And he's one of the best five offensive linemen on this team. You have to find a way to get him on the field. I mean, Junior, I get it. I don't think he sucks, but I do feel a lot of Jet fans are going to turn on him if they lose this game. I'm saying be ground and pounded, but times when they do pass, they need to go for the big play. Yeah, they need to take the shots down the game. They need to, especially you have guys that can stretch the field. You have guys like McCole Hardman, and it's not even taking shots down the field. It's just getting them the ball in space. Like, get them the ball in space so they can make Garrett Wilson. I mean, Garrett Wilson took it to the house last week on a quick slant. You don't just need him to beat a guy down the field for 50 yards. Like, you need them to basically be able to just stretch the field, go out there and take the ball. Like, give McCole Hardman, like I keep saying, give him jet sweeps. Like, LaFleur, one thing I will say is they had a lot of motion in the offense last year, a lot of misdirection. Like, you got to do that. Like, one of the great things about the offense last year was with those jet sweeps, you couldn't rely on it, because if you have McCole Hardman crossing behind in the backfield when the ball is snapped, you have three options who can run the football. Give it to Hardman, give it to Hall, whoever the running back is, or Zach Wilson keeps it. Like, you can be dynamic in the running game and have misdirection in the running game instead of just lining up and trying to run stretch plays or dive plays. Like, you got to be a little creative. I think Nathaniel Hackett has to be more creative. And I get it. It's not ideal for him because he came here for Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers isn't his quarterback. Well, Daniel Hackett's got to prove that he can be a great coach. I blame him in the defense 50-50. Look, Drones, I get it. I feel a lot of fans are going to blame Zach for that. He's a top 5 reason they lost, but I still think the defense did not play well. The offensive line was brutal. Look, it doesn't matter. And the one thing I will say about that is if you had someone like a Joe Flacco or someone with less mobility, like the offense would have been even uglier. So the ability for Zach to run, pick up yards with his legs, and ability to avoid the rush, I think was crucial last week. But look, it's plain simple. The Jets got to protect better. The offensive line looked terrible. And this kind of goes to what I was saying about Joe Douglas getting the blame. If they lose to the Patriots, and like I said, if Will McDonald isn't playing again and this team didn't draft an offensive lineman in the first round, there's going to be criticism of him. And look, as good as Joe Douglas has been, and as much as I have praised Joe Douglas for the job he has done, the biggest reason why the Jets brought in Joe Douglas was to improve this offensive line. And really, outside of Elijah Vera Tucker and Connor McGovern, who, let's be honest, until this season was solid, a lot of the moves Joe Douglas on the offensive line haven't been great. Mekhi Becton's been injured and has been bounced around. It doesn't look like the player the Jets were hoping he would be. Laken Tomlinson was a Pro Bowl caliber guard. They signed him, and he hasn't looked like a Pro Bowl caliber guard since they brought him in. Max Mitchell was a kid I really liked. I still think he's a good developmental kid. Like, I've even been on the record, like, I would like, and Jet fans call me crazy. I would love to know what you think about this. I would rather have Max Mitchell at left tackle than Turner if that's the case on Sunday. Because I feel Mitchell is not a great run blocker, but he's a better pass blocker. He's played left tackle before. He played in the preseason. I feel more comfortable with Mitchell at left tackle than I do with Turner. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you think I'm an idiot? Like, personally, I think Mitchell showed last year he's a pretty good pass blocker, and I would rather have him than Turner at left tackle. That's just my opinion. Heck, I wouldn't even hate it if they do decide to go back into the left side. I wouldn't hate it too if they gave Mitchell Shaw right tackle. Maybe this team views Laken Tomlinson. If he continues to struggle, maybe they put Tittman at left guard, keep AVT at right guard, and put Mitchell back at right tackle. I mean, I wouldn't hate it. I don't think Max Mitchell is bad. And look, I do think that, and Salah said he doesn't want to put Becton at left tackle, which again, I think is kind of silly. Becton wants to play left tackle. Becton feels it's better for his knee to play left tackle. If Dwayne Brown's getting done, I think Becton should get the opportunity at left tackle. And again, the argument about switching him, if anything, he's probably struggling more at right tackle because he hasn't gotten a lot of reps the last 2 years. And this whole summer and this whole training camp until basically, the last week and a half, he was exclusively at the left tackle position. So I just don't get it. So a couple of injury updates. Wes Schweitzer's out. Tony Adams out. John Franklin Myers questionable. Dwayne Brown questionable. Greg Zuerlein questionable. But with Zuerlein was at full practice today, I think he'll be able to go. And then the other thing too would be John Franklin Myers out. Then means probably Wilk McDonald's in the lineup. Tony Adams, big loss. I thought he was playing well. And hopefully, Amos and Ashton Davis play well this weekend. But look, this defense also, like, they need a bounce back game because they've played great against the Patriots. I think they match up well against the Patriots. The Patriots don't have a dynamic player like a CeeDee Lamb on this team. And look, this Jet defense, I hope, has a great game because they want to be the 85 Bears and throw out that comparison. You know what, guys? You got to be able to create turnovers. And last week, you dropped one that probably would have turned the game around. And all this week, I think this Jet defense has been hearing, oh, they're not that great. Oh, they got roasted by CeeDee Lamb. And I do think you're going to see a big difference. And one thing, too, that was a popular topic this week, and I, again, kind of disagree with Robert Saleh. I understand that they play mostly zone, and that's why Sauce doesn't follow. But Sauce Gardner says he wants to guard the number one receiver. And if that number one receiver is killing you, if you're that great of a defensive coordinator and that great of a defensive mind, you have to find a way to make it work because Rex Ryan made it work. Rex Ryan, and for those of you who are new to the channel, like, I really like Rex Ryan, but I do think sometimes he gets a little bit overrated, but I do think as a defensive mind, he's unbelievable. And when you really think about it, I would have loved to see what he could do with the talent the Jets have now, because as great as the Jets defense is, they had great secondaries back when he was coaching, but we forget the Jets had no pass rusher on that team. Like, the Jets did not have a legitimate pass rush or an interior pass rush that they would now. Like, they had no pass rush. So Rex Ryan had to basically do a lot of smoke and mirrors and blitzes, where this team can drop 7 and get pressure with 4. That's another thing too. Last week, they need to get after Mac Jones. They need to hit him hard. And also, a little tip for the football gods and also the referees: you're allowed to hit the quarterback. And if there's a close play in this game, let it go, because the referees have had calls that have killed the New York Jets. And if you are these guys, keep the whistles in your mouth. Sauce, I didn't think they showed the stats with Sauce. He actually played when he was matched up and Lamb played well. But yeah, if Sauce wants to be the best corner in the game, and I think he's got the talent to do it, he's got to start making those interceptions. He's got to start creating those positive plays. The pass breakups are great, but he has to do this. And look, so I get the comparisons of Revis. Uh, I think that they can because I think they got a better pass rush, Drones, in terms of the dominance. But I mean, Sauce has the tools to be that, and he has the motivation to be that. Like, if he wants to guard the number one receiver, I say give him a shot. Weather's going to be bad. Any thoughts on Zach in the rain? Protect the football. It doesn't matter if rain, shine, snow, sleet, hail. Protect the football, James. Like, that's a simple thing. If Zach Wilson goes out there, is efficient, and doesn't turn the football over, and the Jets lose, it'll be painful, it'll be frustrating. But you know what? He did what he was supposed to do. If Zach's throwing the ball to the Patriots, because again, put the pressure on the Patriots offense to beat you. Put the pressure on that offense, on Mac Jones, to beat this defense. Like, if this defense is as great as they say they are, they need to make a statement. They need to force turnovers in this game and give this team a short field. Look, it's going to be ugly, but like I said, you can be creative in the running game. You don't just line up and run it straight up the middle. Have both running backs on the field. Have misdirection. Have it in a shotgun where you have both running backs. Here's an idea. I talked about the jet sweep with Hartman, or the fake jet sweeps. Here's another idea. Why don't you put Dalvin Cook or Breece Hall in the slot and motion them toward the backfield at the snap of the football? So then the defense is going to be like, okay, who's getting the football? Is it Dalvin Cook? Is it Breece Hall? And then you have Zach who can take off and run with it too. Like, I would seriously come into this game with 3 or 4 play designs to get Zach Wilson a running play. Like, whether it's a read option, whether it's a design quarterback run, like, they have to figure out a way to use his athleticism, especially if it's going to be as bad as the weather's predicting. You know, they're going to stack the box, but you can be creative. And the other thing too is run behind this freaking right side, run behind Mount Becton, run behind AVT, like, run behind those freaking hogs that you have on the right side and get some yards. Yeah, the tackling, he's got to be better with that, Drones. I don't disagree. And look, Sauce, again, I still think he's still a great corner, but, you know, it's also a sophomore season. I think you see some guys in the sophomore struggle a little bit, but I still think he is an unbelievable talent, and he just had a rough go. And I do think, you know, he did get off social media. What I'm hoping is that you know, adds a little bit more fuel to the fire, adds a little bit more of, you know, incentive for him to play better. Look, I think he's going to have a great game this week because he heard it all week. He heard it on social media. You know, I do think that this Jet defense, like, to be honest, I think this Jet defense was embarrassed last week. They were embarrassed, and they've had to hear about it all freaking week. And now they have an opportunity against the Patriots team that has dominated them, and a team that's 0-2, and a team that offensively isn't dynamic. They're not a dynamic team. I think this Jet team matches up incredibly well last week. And the big thing for this Jet team is they have to be able to go out there. And I get it. Like, and I see what King Co's saying. If they lose this game, the fan base, I feel, is going to turn because it's another loss to the Patriots. They're 1-2 without Aaron Rodgers. Like, it can get really ugly really fast. And that's why I've started this saying that this is the biggest game for Robert Saleh, because if the Jets win, I think that there will be a lot of confidence instilled in this team. If they lose this game, I think most Jet fans will have lost confidence in Saleh, in Joe Douglas, and maybe the few shreds of people that are clinging on to Zach Wilson will finally be like, you know what? He isn't the guy. James, I kind of agree with Garrett. I'm curious, though, because he was talking a lot about Breece Hall. I think they're going to try to slow down the running game and force Zach Wilson to throw. But look, they have Allen Lazard. Allen Lazard's a good receiver. They have to figure out to get him the ball. They have the tight ends that they need to utilize. And they also have, you know, their running backs. They could use the running backs in the passing game. Running back, like, screens out of the backfield, getting Breece Hall out into space, getting Dalvin Cook. Like, Breece Hall, I mean, you see it when he's in open space, how dangerous it is. Why don't they try to get him as a receiver, put him on a linebacker? I mean, that could be a bad matchup in the passing game. So there's other ways to get around them taking away Garrett Wilson. But again, Nathaniel Hackett, he's got to earn that paycheck. He's got to earn that paycheck and show that he can adjust and that he can have the right game plan. But look, this is a huge game. I'm not sugarcoating it. Like, this is a game that is going to, I really feel, set the tone for the rest of the season. If it's a loss, I think it's going to be a negative tone and be a tone that isn't great for the rest of the season. But if they win, I do think that this fan base gains confidence, this team gains confidence. It's just so important. Like I said, my goal for this team is to be 2-4 by the bye. Even if a loss, they still could technically get there if they beat the Broncos, but get to the bye, be 2-4, like be even 3-5 by week 8. Because if you feel Zach Wilson isn't the answer, you can trade for a veteran and you have a lighter schedule the second half. Like, just be within striking distance. Like, just be in a spot to be decent. And if they lose, that becomes a lot harder. And you're all of a sudden looking at potentially what could be a 1-5 start. Yeah, I agree, King. But again, Saleh today in his press conference said if he can't go, it's going to be Turner, which I think look, I think it's a mistake. And like I've said too, I'd rather have Mitchell than Turner, to be honest with you, at left tackle. And again, like I feel Tittman's good to go. I'd love to see Tittman, but if they don't feel he's ready to play, is this another indictment on the draft? Because again, last week, the first 2 weeks, we barely see their first and second round pick play. And I don't care how good of a team you are, how bad of a team you are, if your first and second round picks are not playing or getting decent playing time, unless they are really a developmental player. And I think Tittman is a bit, but I don't think he's that big. So they really have to go out there and make sure that they put the best 5 out there. And if that is the situation, they could be in a lot of trouble. And I just have this feeling too that, again, Woody Johnson announcing the uniforms going with the all white. Look, I think the all white, like I think like the all white are like is like the best Jet look, especially with the current uniforms and the throwbacks. But I actually love that they wore green last week. I mean, they wore green like one time last year. I know I'm getting a little bit off track, but look, I like Saleh even said he's not moving back to the left tackle. Doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't. Becton wants to play left tackle. He played most of the snaps at left tackle. It doesn't make sense. And again, this is like I said, if they lose this game, the offensive line plays poorly again. Everything about people are going to question Saleh more and his decisions. I mean, okay, you lost, but the offensive line looked terrible, and Tittman wasn't out there again, and McGovern got his lunch money taken from him, and Billy Turner looked shot, or Dwayne Brown looked shot, and Becton's not playing the left tackle spot. Like everything that the Jets do will be questioned if they do not win this week. But that's going to do it for this episode. We will be back immediately following the Patriot game this Sunday to break down everything, hopefully in the Jets win, talk about what happened in the game and what the Jets need to go doing forward. If you're new to the channel, give us a like, give us a subscribe, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Also check out our community page for newest news and, of course, all the latest polls on the New York Jets. But I'm your host, Nolan Rich, and this is Rich Sports Talk. We will see you next time.